Good morning, students. Say your prayer. Thank you. நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர். நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் முறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர். நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் முறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர். நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் முறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். So, take your social science book, students. Take na? Okay. Take page number 173. Today we will see the new topic. So we are discussing about the different landform. So the exogenetic forces, which cause different landforms. Today we will see about the role of glacier. So just to recall what we have discussed in our previous class. So in our previous class we discussed about the landforms formed by the action of underground water. So first we saw erosional landform, then depositional landform. So what are the erosional landforms formed by the action of underground water? Yeah, terra rosa. So in Italian term it means a red soil. Yeah, so it look like red color. Okay, so red soil. Then lapis, sinkhole, caves and caverns. So these are the erosional landforms formed by the action of underground water. Then what are the depositional landforms of underground water? Yeah, stalactite, stalagmite and column. So these are the depositional landforms of underground water. So today we will see the landforms of glaciers. Okay, so glaciers. Have you seen glaciers? So glaciers are nothing but a large mass of ice. Yes, so glaciers are nothing but a large mass of ice that moves slowly over the land from its place of accumulation. Yeah, that is, so glaciers are formed in a place, so in a land, then it moves slowly down over the land. Okay, so that is called as a glacier. So glacier is a large mass of ice that moves slowly over the land from its place of accumulation. So it formed in a place and it moves slowly from its origin place. Yeah, so accumulation means so they gradually get more and more of something over a period of time. That is gradually getting more and more of period of time. Okay, so it is also known as river of ice. It is also known as river of ice. It originates in one place and slowly moves down over the land. Okay, so the place of accumulation is called as snowfield. So the place where the glaciers are formed as called as snowfield. Okay, so how glaciers are formed? Yeah, so if there is snowfall continuously in a place for a period of time means, so the snows slowly settle down and it converts into a big mass of ice that we call as glacier. Okay, so if there is a snowfall continuously in a place means, so where the snowfall occurs, so where the climate is very low. Yeah, so it took place in the mountainous region or in the polar region. Yeah, so it took place in the mountainous region or in the polar region. So there you can see snowfall often. Yeah. So if the snowfall is continuous means, continue to take place means, slowly the snows form a iceberg which will turn into a glacier. Yeah, so that way we call it as it is a large mass of ice. Yeah, so glaciers are nothing but a large mass of ice that moves slowly over the land from its place of accumulation. So from its place of accumulation it moves slowly. Yeah. It is also known as river of ice. Since it is moving it was called as river. Yeah. So since it is moving it was called as river of ice. So then the place of accumulation, so the place of formation is called as snowfield. So the height above which there is a permanent snow cover in the higher altitude or latitude is called as snow line. Yeah, so it was formed in the higher altitude region only. Yeah, so higher altitude or in the higher latitude region, that is in the equator. It was not formed in the equatorial region. So glaciers will form only in the higher altitude region. So for example you can see glaciers in the Himalayan mountains. Yeah, and also in the higher latitude, that is you can see in the polar regions. So north pole, south pole only you can see glaciers. Okay, so you can find glaciers in the higher altitude or in the higher latitude region. Yeah. So the place where it was formed, so that is the height where there is a permanent snow cover is called as snow line. Yes, the height, so where you can find this glacier was called as snow line. So higher the latitude, lower the snow line from sea level. So if you go higher latitude, so the snow line is low. Yeah, so the lower the snow line, so the snow line is low. That is, if you go height means in the latitude region means, so the snow line will be low. Yeah, so from the sea level the snow line will be low. Yeah. So then the gradual transformation of snow into ice is called as fin or neve. Okay, so the transformation of snow into ice, so granular ice, so glacier is called as fin or new. So and finally it becomes a solid glacial ice. So the gradual transformation of snow into granular ice is called fin or new, and finally it becomes a solid glacial ice. Okay. So what is meant by glacial? Yeah, glacier is a large mass of ice that moves slowly over the land from its place of accumulation. Yeah, so the glaciers are nothing but the large mass of ice that moves slowly over the land. So it is also known as river of ice. So glaciers are also known as river of ice. Then the place of accumulation, that is the place where the glaciers were formed, was called as snowfield. Yeah, the place where you can find the glaciers were called as snowfield. So the height above which there is a permanent snow cover. So the place, so the height where there is a permanent snow cover in the higher altitude or latitude is called as snow line. Okay. Then the gradual transformation of snow into granular ice is called as fin or neve. The gradual transformation of snow into ice is called fin or neve, and finally it becomes a solid glacial ice. So erosional landforms of glacier. Yeah, so you know, so glaciers are the large mass of ice, so that moves slowly down. Yeah, so while it moves, it erode some particles along with it. Yeah, so since it is very large and also very large in mass, while it moves down, because it was called as river of ice, so it moves slowly down from its place of accumulation. Yeah, it eroded some particles along with it. Yeah, so the glaciers, when formed over the mountainous region, while moving down, it eroded some particles. Okay, so based on the erosional agent, so based on the erosional process, so glaciers are considered as the powerful erosive agents. So based on its erosive process, so glaciers were considered as the powerful erosional agents. So some of the erosional landforms formed by the glaciers were Shirk, Arets, Matterhorn, U-shaped value, Hanging value, fjords, etc. Yeah. Then most of these glacial features are predominantly, so most importantly, seen in the countries like Switzerland, Norway, etc. Okay, so glaciers are large mass of ice. Okay, so while it moves down, it erodes some particles. So under it, okay, so under the snow field, so under the snow line, so where it was formed. So while moving down, it eroded some particles. So it eroded some particles along with it. So because of its huge mass, so it eroded some particles and formed erosional landforms like cirque, arets, Matterhorn, U-shaped valley, Hanging valley, fjords, etc. Okay, so this type of erosional landforms can be seen in countries like Switzerland, Norway, etc. So cirque, what you can find in this picture? So just to look at this shadow region. So a bowl shaped depression you can find now. See a bowl shaped armchair like depression now. So this is called a cirque. So glaciers erode the steep side walls of the mountains. So the glaciers, while moving down, it erodes the steep side walls of the mountains and form a bowl shaped armchair like depression. So like this in this picture. Yes, it was called as cirque. So the glaciers erodes the steep side walls of the mountains and forms a bowl shaped arm like depression. So armchair like depression. Okay. So this is called as cirque. Arete. So arete are narrow ridges formed when two cirque walls join together back to back and forms narrow knife-like ridges. Okay, so arete are nothing but the narrow ridges. So formed when two cirque walls join together back to back. Yeah, so that is when two cirque walls. So that is two bowl-shaped armchair-like depression seen at both sides of the mountain range means it was called as arete. Yeah, so, and it looked like a knife-like ridge. Yes, and forms a narrow knife-like structure. So look at this picture. So at the top it looked like a knife, sharp edge, no. So it was called as arete. So aretas are nothing but narrow ridges formed when two cirque walls join together back to back and forms narrow knife-like ridges. So it was called as arete. Yeah. So cirque are nothing but the glaciers surrounds the side walls of the mountains and forms a bowl-shaped armchair-like depression. Then if the cirque, so two cirque join together means at back to back, it was called as arete. Then pyramidal peak. So pyramidal peak, so nothing but when three or more cirque meet together means it formed a pyramidal peak. Yeah, so you can see in this picture. So this was formed after the meeting of three or more cirques. So when three cirques or more cirques meet together means it form a peak like structure. It was called as pyramidal peak. So for example Matterhorn peaks. So look at this picture. So you can find cirque, so an armchair shaped depression at one side, and arete, say a knife like structure, that is two cirque combine together and form an arete. Then pyramidal peak, yeah, so that is three cirque, so three or more cirque combine together and form the pyramidal peak. Yeah, so if the two cirque meet at one side, so at one place means, so it form an arete. When three or more cirques meet at a place, so join together means it form a pyramidal peak. So you can see in this picture. So cirque, another name was core. It was mentioned in this picture. U-shaped value. So when the glaciers moves down along a river value, the value further gets eroded deep and wide to form a U-shaped value. Yeah. So when the glaciers moves down along a river value, so while it flows over a river value means it eroded deep. So the value further get eroded deep and wide and form a U-shaped value like this. Okay. So this was formed so due to the erosion activities of glacier. So the glaciers what will do means it slowly erode the particles along the river value and further it increases the value deep. So it further increases the value deep and wide and form a U-shaped value. So hanging value. So you can see this picture. So white color line is there now. It is nothing but hanging value. So it is hanging from the mountainous region. So these are the values eroded by tributary glacier. So from the main glacier and that hangs over the main value. Okay, so these are the values eroded by the tributary glacier and that hangs over the main value. So that is it hang forward from the main value. So that way it was called as hanging value. Look at this picture. So you can find arete. So that is a knife-like structure, no. Then cirque. So the hollow depression. Yeah. Then the hanging value. So it like a river. So it is hanging from the top of the mountain to bottom of the mountain. Then U-shaped value. So because of the flow of river value. So it flows over the river value and around the mountainous region deeply and formed U-shaped value. Okay, once you can find a cirque, arete, hanging value, then U-shaped trunk value in this region, in this picture. Then fjords. Fjords are glacial values that are partly submerged in the sea. Fjords are glacial values that are partly submerged in the sea. That is, if you found glacial values submerged in the sea means it was called as fjords. Then depositional landforms of glacier. So till now we saw about the erosional landforms of glacier. So glacier after formation slowly it moves down while moving down it erodes some particles along with it. So it can break the rock surfaces also while moving down. So because of its huge mass, so while eroding some particles along with it forms different shapes in this mountainous region. So which we have discussed. So we have discussed about cirque, arête, pyramidal peak, U-shaped value, hanging value, then fjords. So these are the erosional landforms of glacier. So cirque nothing but so the glaciers erode the steep side of the mountains and forms a bowl shaped depression. So when the cirque combine together means and form a narrow ridge-like structure means it was called as arête. When the cirque three or more cirques meet together means it form a peak-like structure. Then U-shaped value, so nothing but when the glacier river flows over the river valley means it eroded the particles, eroded the surface along with it, and it goes deeper and deeper and formed a value, so U-shaped value that we saw. Then hanging value, so that is they hang over the main value, so they hang over the main value. Then fjords, so when the glaciers submerged in the sea, so partly submerged in the sea means it was called a fjord. So we saw about the detail. Now we will see about the depositional landforms of glacier. So what are the landforms formed by the depositional action of glacier? So after getting eroded, so we saw the glaciers erode some particles from the mountainous region along with it slowly down. So while eroding these materials, so while eroding these particles, it comes down and form different types of land features. So it deposits at the path of the footpath of the mountainous range. So after getting eroded, fragments of rocks and boulders. So boulders means a very large rock which has been shaped by water or the weather. So nothing but a very large rock. So boulder means a very large rock, so which was formed by the action of water or by the action of weather. So along with it forming glacial debris. So glacial debris gets deposited in the low lying areas. So glaciers formed at the higher latitude or altitude region, so moves down to the low lying areas and forms depositional features like moraines, drumlines, eskers, cames and outwash plains. So glacials debris gets deposited in the low lying areas and forms depositional features like moraines, drumlines, eskers, cames and outwash plains. First moraine. So materials deposited by the glaciers were called as moraine. So the materials which were deposited by the glaciers were called as moraine. So based on the location, they are classified into three types. So moraine were classified into three types based on their location. So first is called as ground moraine, terminal moraine and lateral moraine. So ground moraine, terminal moraine and lateral moraine. Then drumlin. So drumlin are deposits of glacial moraines that resemble giant inverted teaspoons or half cut egg. So look at this picture. You can find it look like a egg. So half cut egg no. So this was called as drumlin. So drumlin were nothing but the deposits of glacial moraines. So moraines we saw. So the materials deposited by glaciers. So if the materials deposited by glaciers look like an inverted teaspoon or half cut egg means it was called as drumlin. So if the materials deposited by the glaciers look like half cut egg or inverted teaspoons means it was called as drumlin. So inverted teaspoon, you use a teaspoon in your home no. If you keep that in an inverted position means how it look like? So like this in this picture no. So it was called as drumlin. So it was called as basket of egg topography. So it will look like a half cut egg. Yes, it was not look like full shaped egg. So if you cut egg into half piece means how it look? Almost it resembles like that only. So it was called as basket of egg topography. So it is called as drumlin. So then esker. So the long narrow ridges composed of boulders gravel. So boulders means a large mass of rock. So boulders were a very large rock. So already we saw. So the long narrow ridges composed of boulders, gravel and sand deposited by the streams of melting water which run parallel to a glacier. So the long narrow ridges, so deposited by the streams of melting water which run parallel to a glacier are called as esker. Esker were nothing but the long narrow ridges, so which were formed parallel to glacier. So which were formed parallel to glacier is called as esker. So you can see in this picture, so a long narrow ridge like structure. So this was formed because of the action of glaciers. So the glaciers deposits the boulders, gravel and sand, so over the running water, over the streams of melting water which run parallel to a glacier. So it was called as esker. Outwash plain. So an outwash plain consists of glacial sediments deposited by the melting ice at the terminus, so that is at the end of a glacier. It appears as an extensive accumulation of sand, gravel, silt. So it appears as an extensive accumulation of sand, gravel and silt. That is, outwash plain was seen at the edge of the glacier region. So at the edge of the glaciers. Okay, so you can see in this picture outwash plain. That is, it is nothing but the sediments that were left at the end of the glacier. So an outwash plain consists of a glacial sediments deposited by the melting ice at the terminus, that is at the end of a glacier. So it appears as an extensive accumulation of sand, gravel and silt. So if you see at the end of the glacier region means you can find a large mass of a large piece of sand or gravel, that is small stones and also sometimes silt. It was called as outwash plain. Outwash plain. So an outwash plain consists of glacial sediments deposited by the melting ice at the terminus, so that is at the end of a glacier. It appears as an extensive accumulation of sand, gravel, silt. So it appears as an extensive accumulation of sand, gravel and silt. That is, outwash plain was seen at the edge of the glacier region. So at the edge of the glaciers. Okay, so you can see in this picture outwash plain. That is, it is nothing but the sediments that were left at the end of the glacier. So an outwash plain consists of a glacial sediments deposited by the melting ice at the terminus, that is at the end of a glacier. So it appears as an extensive accumulation of sand, gravel and silt. So if you see at the end of the glacier region means you can find a large mass of a large piece of sand or gravel, that is small stones and also sometimes silt. It was called as outwash plain. Okay students, so today's class we have discussed about the different landforms of glacier. So both the erosional landform and the depositional landform. So we saw the definition of glacier. So what do you mean by glacier? So glacier is nothing but a large mass of ice that moves slowly over the land from its place of accumulation. So that is, glacier means nothing but a large mass of ice. Then what are the erosional landforms of glacier? Shirk, arete, pyramidal peak, U-shaped value, hanging value, F-jut. Then depositional landforms of glacier were moraine, drumlin, esker and outwash plain. So we have discussed it detailedly. So I have attached videos about glaciers. So the landforms formed by glaciers along with this class. So just look at this. Okay, so you can clearly understand that. Okay, so if you have any doubt means contact me. So for textbook reading, so whatever topic I have taught you, so just read it fully. So today's topic just consists of one page only. So read it loudly. So stand up and read it loudly and then complete your homework. Okay, so I will send a screenshot of your homework. So do your homework properly and also your textbook reading. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Glaciers. Glimpses are the glaciers and snow showers that make the viewer attractive in nature. Generally, the landfill is moving from high mountain ranges. Glacier is dense body of ice that is constantly moving under its own weight. Factors for ice melting: thermal heat, global heat. There are three factors for ice river movements: mountain sliding, gravitation, solid rock of ice. The erosion of ice river takes in two forms. One is a dull snowfall. Release of two ice cubes. There are three types of ice river types: the valley glacier, continental glacier, alpine glacier. Let's see about the valley ice. These are located on top of the mountains. Alpine mountains and Himalayan regions are found with these glaciers. Continental glaciers is collection of ice cubes at the poles. It is found in Antarctica, Greenland and Iceland. Mountain bottom glacier. It is found in some parts of Antarctica and Alaska. Many landscapes are formed by the action of the ice. They are arid, cirques, on U-shaped valley, hanging valley, moraines. It has three types categories: terminal moraines, medial moraines, lateral moraines, trumplines, retreats. Glaciers play a large role in creating these landscapes.
Agents of gradation, glaciers. The second agent of gradation is a well-known structure of ice known as a glacier. A glacier is a huge mass of ice that moves slowly over land. Glaciers are also known as rivers of ice. Glaciers are made of compact and recrystallized snow, and hence form in areas having a permanent cover of snow and ice. A region which has such a permanent accumulation of snow is called a snow field. A good example of such a place is the polar regions as well as the high mountain ranges. There are two types of glaciers. The first type is called a continental glacier, and these glaciers are also known as ice sheets. Such glaciers are found in the polar regions such as Antarctica and Greenland. Another type of glacier is known as a valley glacier or alpine glacier. This type of glacier moves down from the summits of mountain ranges along valleys. Let's understand how these glaciers are formed. Snow accumulates in circular depressions called cirques, which have a relatively flat floor, steep slopes on three sides, and an opening on the down valley side. As more and more snow accumulates, it gets compressed and recrystallizes into a dense, grainy ice, which is called firn. When the ice layer is about 50 meters thick, ferns fuse together and form a mass of solid ice, which eventually forms what we know as a glacier. When continuous accumulation takes place, the overlying layers put pressure on the underlying layers, thereby converting the snow into glacial ice. Glacial erosion is nothing but slow movement of glaciers. At the base of the glacier, where the ice meets the bedrock on the surface of the earth, an immense pressure creates thin layers of melted water, which makes the glaciers slide. As the glacier moves over the rocks, it plows and lifts out the blocks of bedrock, scraping the rocks along the mountains, carrying along the load. Glacial erosion occurs through two processes. The first process is that of plucking. It is the process during which the melted water penetrates the cracks on the rocks and refreezes later. This, in turn, exerts a great pressure on rocks, making them to break. The second process of glacial erosion is called abrasion. When ice and its load moves along, it erodes the rock by scraping the floor as well as the side walls. Glaciers also form certain landforms. The first one is called moraine, which is a glacier that is loaded with rock debris. Moraines range from large rocks to fine dust, which gets deposited at the glacier's end, known as the spout. Another type of a landform formed by glaciers is an arete. Arates are narrow, knife-like mountain ridges formed by glacial erosion. The high peaks of these ridges are called horns. Type of landform formed by glaciers is called a hanging valley. It is formed when the spreading ice smoothens the land beneath it. This kind of a valley is formed when a tributary valley meets the main glacier. A lake formed because of the melting of glaciers is also a landform and is known as tarn. These small lakes are formed in cirques when the glaciers melt. The fourth landform formed by glaciers is a crevasse. Crevasses are deep, wedge-shaped openings or cracks found in glaciers. Crevasses are dangerous for mountain climbers, especially when they lie hidden under a layer of snow. Another landform that all of us are familiar with is an iceberg. When large pieces of ice break apart, fall and float in the sea, they are known as icebergs. While an iceberg floats on the sea, only 1/8 of it is visible above the surface of the water, which makes it very dangerous to ships. A fjord is another landform formed by glaciers. Fjords are steep-sided inlets along the coasts, where mountains are found adjacent to the sea. Glaciers are significant to us because they provide us with fresh water and have also been responsible for carving the spectacular scenery of mountains and lakes for us.